Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're breaking down Carl Jung's incredibly profound concepts to uncover why that emotional armor you've worked so hard to build is actually destroying you, and more importantly, how to find true freedom. So if you've ever felt just totally exhausted by the weight of maintaining this perfect, untouchable exterior, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to deconstruct the psychology behind our deepest emotional defenses and map out the ultimate path to becoming whole. Let's get into it.
Right off the bat, ask yourself this. Are you exhausted from trying to maintain a flawless image just to protect yourself from getting hurt? I mean, we all kind of secretly harbor this dream of being completely unshakable, right? Someone who simply doesn't care about criticism or rejection or loss. You might be tired of trying to please everyone and keeping up this relentless facade of strength. Deep down, all you really want is just a moment of rest from the overwhelming pressure of being untouchable.
Section 1. The Illusion of Armor. We have to start our journey by totally exposing the great myth of emotional survival. There is this huge, stark contrast between the false safety of closing yourself off and the true immunity of self-awareness. See, we think control, building masks, and forcing apathy will protect us. We walk around saying things like, "Oh, I couldn't care less," or "Nothing gets to me." But the brutal truth is, inside we're still bleeding. What actually protects us is awareness, integration, and acceptance. True strength isn't the absence of pain. It's being fully aware of exactly who you are, even when you're hurting.
Here is the absolute kicker. External actions, like the harsh words or betrayals of other people, only have the power to destroy you if they activate an old, unaddressed trauma within your own mind. We always want to believe that what hurts us is out there, right? In poorly chosen words or sudden abandonments. But these external events are literally just reflections of what hasn't been integrated into your internal world yet. It's not about what happens to you, it's about where it hits you. Moving right along to Section 2, Awakening the Unconscious. This brings us to the real battlefield, descending into the depths of your own mind. Jung hit the nail on the head here. The pain you feel, that anger that explodes out of literally nowhere, the decisions you constantly sabotage, that isn't bad luck. Those are the invisible hands of your unexamined mind. You might think you're in control of your life, but as long as you're living on autopilot and just reacting without knowing why, you're really not. You're just playing out scripts written in the dark.
So as long as you keep sweeping your pain under the psychological rug, you remain a mere puppet to your emotions. The unconscious isn't just some vague, foggy cloud. It is a highly active force. It's an entire system of forgotten memories, traumas, and fears that you really don't want to face. But, just because you ignore it doesn't mean it magically disappears. It continues to dictate what you feel and how you act, straight from the shadows.
And if you refuse to wake up and look inward, well, your unconscious is going to force your attention. Have you ever wondered why certain words absolutely destroy you while others don't even make you flinch? It's because those specific words are touching super sensitive, unhealed points. The unconscious will always find a way out, whether that's through toxic relationship cycles, unbreakable self-sabotage, or sudden bursts of anxiety when everything supposedly seems fine. That isn't fate, it's your unconscious desperately trying to wake you up.
Which brings us to Section 3, the journey of individuation.
To stop being a puppet, we have to explore this radical psychological cure. Becoming untouchable isn't about building higher walls, it's an act of incredibly deep self-knowledge where you finally, bravely embrace everything you've buried in the dark. That is individuation. It's not about becoming a better, flawless person. It's simply about achieving wholeness. It's the meeting of your light and your shadow. When you finally integrate your fears and insecurities, you stop merely reacting to the world. I absolutely love this concept because it points to such a profound truth. That human soul you're trying to hide behind an invulnerable, highly controlled character, it is screaming to be seen. You can read literally every self-help book and master every psychological trick in the book, but if you don't allow yourself to be genuinely, messily human, you are missing the entire point. True emotional strength has zero to do with being cold and everything to do with bringing what you've buried into the light. But to achieve that individuation, you kind of have to tear off your own skin and dissolve what we call the persona. You have to unlearn everything you thought you were. This mask is really just a tool of collective convenience. You constructed it to survive, to be loved, or to be accepted by society. But to truly become who you are, you've got to drop the act. You aren't your achievements and you aren't your traumas. You have to let go of the performance to find what's actually underneath.
All right, Section 4. The Sacred Role of Pain.
Now, tearing off that mask requires a complete reframe of how we view suffering. Because here's the thing, suffering evolves. When you simply try to avoid it, it mutates. It disguises itself as anxiety, then morphs into anger, then apathy, boredom, and eventually self-destructive impulses that you don't even understand. We were all taught that crying is weak, but the harder you run from suffering, the more it chases you, digging these deep tunnels inside you until the whole structure collapses.
Jung completely reframed pain here. It's not a failure, it is a messenger of the soul. It's like a sacred alarm clock from your unconscious, begging for transformation. When you numb yourself, or distract yourself, or keep yourself relentlessly busy, you are ignoring the messenger. You literally have to stop and ask, what is this pain actually trying to show me? What part of me is crying out for change?
So how does this transformation happen? It comes in phases. First, you deconstruct the mask, which, let's be honest, leaves you feeling super vulnerable. Then, you have to sit with that terrible friction and pain. Letting go of old beliefs is essentially a mourning process. Change hurts so much because you're literally at war with yourself. Your ego wants control, but your soul demands growth. It is a psychological death and rebirth. But it's only in the ruins of your old certainties that your true self can finally be born.
Section 5. The Price of Loneliness.
Okay, so we've reached the abyss of our journey, and true depth demands a really heavy, isolating toll. You are going to face profound loneliness on this path. Why? Because most people remain trapped on the surface, terrified of feeling. And as you mature, you inevitably outgrow those old spaces. This is a crucial realization. You aren't distancing yourself out of pride. When you stop wearing your mask, you quickly realize how many of your relationships were based entirely on the false character you were playing.
It's a brutal awakening, for sure. But looking right into the eyes of your own shame and anger and realizing they no longer control you is the ultimate transition from merely surviving to actually living. You created your defenses to survive, but survival is just a baseline, right? It's not the final destination. When you face your monsters and look at your own neediness and anger, you completely strip them of their power. You're finally answering life's call beyond mere survival.
And finally, Section 6. True Emotional Immunity.
As we emerge from the depths, we arrive at the ultimate reward of this painful transformation. You no longer need to win every single argument or appear impossibly strong to everyone, because your strength now comes from absolute clarity about your own internal triggers. Think about it. A shell is rigid and brittle. It breaks under pressure. An integrated core of consciousness is solid. You might still feel pain, you might still get hurt, but it does not break you because you've stopped being purely reactive.
As the saying goes, what you resist persists. By accepting your shadows instead of fighting them tooth and nail, the actions of others lose their power to destroy you. You still feel the pain, absolutely, but you no longer drown in it. For your whole life, you've resisted the fear of not being enough. But true emotional immunity isn't about being hard or cold. It's expanding your awareness so fully that when the world does hit you, it hits a rock-solid foundation of truth, not a fragile, easily bruised ego.
And that brings us to our final truth. What shields you isn't protecting yourself from life. It's diving into it so deeply that the world can't find a superficial place to hit you anymore. People living on the surface get tossed around and broken by literally every single wave of criticism or misfortune. But those who take that terrifying dive into the unconscious, they find this profound silence, stability, and unshakable power that exists way below the turbulence.
So, I gotta ask, as we wrap up today's explainer, are you gonna keep surviving behind a mask? Or are you ready to dive deep and live with the truth? The world is always gonna try to knock you down. But when you operate from a place of deep integration and wholeness, it just won't find a place to land the punch. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into Carl Jung's wisdom. Take a second to really chew on that final